There are only two acceptable names for the game that's going to take place on Saturday afternoon in Jacksonville, Florida, for the final time for the next couple of years. It is either Florida, Georgia, or it is the world's largest outdoor cocktail party. I guess there's a third. You can just call it the cocktail party for short. That's it. It's one of those three. It's not Georgia, Florida. It's not the Florida Bowl. It's not the drinking game. It's not the, I don't know, a River City Showdown or War for the. No, it's one of those three. And we're here to talk about it today. A rivalry is renewed in Jacksonville for the last time for a couple of years. It will be back in Jacksonville, as we know, for the future once the new stadium is built. But it will be going to Atlanta and then Tampa, Florida for a year piece. But in this last stadium, this is it for the Gators and the Bulldogs, renewing this rivalry once more. All right, Adrian Perez at Gator Diamond Pod for Gator baseball and stickball stuff. He is the guy not talking right now. I am Neil Shulman at All Kinds Weather. I am the guy currently talking right now. Follow me on Facebook as well, on Instagram, at All Kinds Weather, everywhere except for Facebook, which is in All Kinds of Weather. Adrian got a couple of quick shout outs to go through before we get to the crux of our show today. Got to shout out our sponsor first and foremost. The All Kinds of Weather forecast is proudly sponsored by 401k Generation, the wealth management company that helps you invest today for your future tomorrow. Their team of advisors is committed to providing guidance and education for your 401k plan and its participants. And they also offer a range of enrollment solutions tailored to meet the unique needs of your company's 401k plan. Whether it's savings for your child's college, investment advice, or even your retirement, 401k Generation's team of advisors makes getting to know you their top priority. Their advisors will tailor a path to assist you in navigating life's financial milestones and reaching your financial goals. 401k Generation, building stronger futures, one generation at a time. For more information, contact them 866-998-5879 or visit their website at 401kgeneration.com. Also, the last time the Florida Gators played a football game, they beat Mississippi State 23-21. Our very own Dustin Smith nailed that score precisely. You want to know how he did that? You want to get some more insight and kind of sort of pick his brain as to how he did that? You're going to want to check out our Patreon. That's patreon.com/CFB Forecaster. That's where we get our model from. Dustin gives us access to that so we can make the best picks we can. Sometimes we take advantage of it. Sometimes we don't. When we do, we typically are a lot closer to the final score. And again, that is how Dustin nailed that Mississippi State game. So if you want to make money on college football, go check it out. It's very difficult to beat the Vegas odds in the spread. Money lines, I guess, are somewhat easier to guess, but the spreads are almost insane when you think about how Vegas hits on some of these lines. So yeah, go check it out. CFP or patreon.com/CFB Forecaster. So you'll get the top 25 power ratings there, complete 136 team rankings, and weekly game-by-game projections with model spreads, totals, and win probabilities. Again, that is patreon.com/CFB Forecaster. All right, Adrian. Florida, Georgia, the cocktail party, the world's largest outdoor cocktail party, whatever you want to call it. It's one of those three. It's happening this Saturday. The Gators will be taking the field, I guess, with, I want to say, the most hope or hype that they've had since Dan Mullen was here in this game. Billy Napier, the last 3 years, or his first 3 years were completely non-competitive. His first 2 years were completely non-competitive, as well as Dan Mullen's final year. Last year was competitive for a while, but then in the fourth quarter, Georgia just salted it away after DJ Lagway got hurt. This time around, the Gators have fired Billy Napier. We're going to talk about his coaching search replacement in a little bit, but want to start the show by just getting your sense on this. Is this the game that you think Florida has the best chance to beat Georgia in since Dan Mullen left?
Yeah, probably since Mullen's Kyle Trask team. What was that, 2020, right?
2020,
since the last time we beat him. Yeah, since the last time we beat him. Now, Georgia has a little bit to do with that, though, right? We're going to talk about that later also, right? Maybe Georgia has slipped a little. Heck, even Kirby Smart has said that, okay? Kirby Smart has said that in a couple of interviews, that this team just doesn't have quite the depth that they've had since he's been there pretty much the whole time. So Georgia has a lot to do with it. A lot of Billy Napier not being there has a lot to do with it. the fan base, us, people who talk about this a lot, people who follow the Gators, not really quite knowing what we're going to see on Saturday. We just don't know. So all that anticipation kind of makes it exciting. You know, it's Tuesday. I'm counting down the days until Saturday. Maybe we'll get blown out, but at least it's fun to have some anticipation for a Gator football game and not anticipating, you know, Billy Napier's offensive play calling. So that's a positive, man. And that's what we were always talking about, why Billy had to hit the road, man.
Yeah, hit the road and get paid a nice $20 million to do so. But look, we're not going to harp on Napier on this show. We did that. We did our therapy session on that the last show. I am going to point out in very quick form here just how awful he is or was, because that is no longer handcuffing us. Like you said, there is the excitement that guy who is just so historically abominable at Florida is no longer a presence within the Florida locker room. Now, he's a good guy. I'm not trying to say that, but sure, not disputing that. But in terms of his X's and O's brain or lack thereof functionality, it was a hindrance to the Florida Gators. It was just a massive pair of handcuffs or a pair of cement blocks that were just strapped onto the Gators' legs as they're trying to tread water, not even, climb, but just try to not sink. And that's gone. Those cinder blocks have been cut off and removed. And now there's hope with Billy Gonzalez. What can he do? What is he going to do? He's a wide receivers coach. He's been in that title for 20 years. Are we going to see an explosive passing game? We've talked before on this show about the novel idea of the wide receivers being the focal point of your passing game, especially when there's no Kyle Pitts or Aaron Hernandez or Ben Troop or even a Jordan Reed or a Trey Burton type at tight end who could make those kinds of explosive plays, or even a DeAndre Goolsby who could just make those kinds of plays. We don't have anything close to that on this team. So with Billy Gonzalez now being the head coach for a day, kid in a candy store, as I think they used to say on bowl games where the head coach left one of the schools and they would talk about the interim guy for one day. Well, he's a kid in a candy store for 5 games now, including against some of Florida's biggest rivals, including Georgia, Tennessee, and FSU. So let's see if he can recall back some of those Urban Meyer days. He's had a bye to do so. He was part of those meeting rooms where, for example, in 2006, the Gators would roll out something new every week. It was the Bubba Caldwell reverse. Then it was the triple option. Then it was with the inside shovel pass. It was always something. Let's see if he's used that bye week to mess around on the whiteboard and come up with something new, because he's the constant that was in those meeting rooms with Urban Meyer and with Dan Mullen, who was the offensive coordinator for those days. And then again with Mullen from 2018 to 21, a time period in which Florida did have a lot of success. And when they did not have success, it was not because of Dan Mullen's lack of an offensive mind. So there is real reason for hope here. And like you said, we might get blown out. Billy Gonzalez as a head coach and Ryan O'Hara and Russ Callaway kind of splitting the OC role from what we've heard. I mean, he said, okay, O'Hara's going to call the plays, but Callaway will be the OC. Okay, whatever the hell that means, who cares? It's something new. We saw 45 games of Billy Napier's stupidity as a play caller. We saw 45 games of what we knew was not going to work because we saw 45 games of it. Compare that with we have no idea what we're going to see. It could be great. It could be terrible, but we know it's not going to be any worse because it can't possibly be. And it could be a lot better. So it's that unknown that makes this all so exciting, at least to me. And we'll come back to this game in a moment. But first, we have to talk about the coaching search to replace him because there's a lot of buzz about it. And we would be remiss if we didn't at least touch on it. So the rumors are floating. There was Pete Damel's report, I think, probably 45 minutes or so before we started recording this show, about how he would be stunned if Lane Kiffin remained at Ole Miss next year. Now, Lane Kiffin's put out a lot of tweets that would make a departure of his from Ole Miss just an absolute dagger for Ole Miss fans, including, but not limited to, where he puts out a graphic with him and his family in Ole Miss gear and he calls it the Velvet Ditch, which is a new nickname for the town of Oxford, Mississippi. That's not apparently that well known, like how Baton Rouge is called Red Stick, and how Gainesville is called Hogtown. Like a lot of people at least know that. The Velvet Ditch is a fairly new nickname, and he uses that in a Twitter post, a tweet. So that would really, really sting the Ole Miss fans if he left. But Pete Thamel is also the guy that's pretty well connected. So, Adrian, we now have some competition in our friends from Baton Rouge. Where do we think he goes? And if it's not to Florida, then who is going to come to Florida?
Wow. Okay. Loaded question, man. Listen, Florida has had 2 excellent chances to hire Lane Kiffin, right? They could have hired him 4 years ago when they hired Billy Napier, and they could have hired him last year. Both times would have been with no problema. Lane would have driven the U-Haul truck here, picked up a couple speeding tickets, wouldn't have cared, would have come here at the drop of a hat, okay? In my opinion, things have changed. This is how I see it, Neil, and I got no inside information. Oh, and the caveat here is no one knows nothing. This is all just speculation, okay? The only people who know anything here is Lane Kiffin and that rich freaking dude Sexton.
Jimmy Sexton.
Jimmy Sexton. $50 million he'll be making in the next couple months here. Probably even more than that. But listen, this is how I see it, okay? Scott Strickland had his shot. I used to get in arguments with people on Twitter before I did this podcast thing. I used to get in knockout, drag-out fights with people on Twitter. You know who you are if you're watching, too, about how much I wanted Lane Kiffin, and they would badmouth Lane and say I was stupid and stuff like that. We don't want Lane. That's not a UF culture and stuff like that. You know, and now Lane's considered to be the savior of our program. How ironic, right? But now we want Lane to bail us out. We're looking for Lane to bail out Strickland. Okay, for dropping the ball the last 4 years a couple of times already, okay? Is he going to do that? My opinion, he's not. I don't see him going to LSU. It's not a money issue. LSU is all about the money. I see Lane staying in Ole Miss for a lot of the same reasons I said we should have hired him last year. I said we should have hired him 4 years ago. I said, this is a different Lane Kiffin. This guy is much more mature. He's gotten older. He likes to troll on social media. But again, Neil, I said it a couple weeks ago on this show. The fan base that was raised, birthed by Steve Spurrier having an issue with a coach for trolling on social media. I mean, do we need to go back to some of Steve Spurrier's famous quotes? I don't think we have all show to do that, okay? So we blew it, Gator Nation. We blew it. And now we're going to suffer the consequences because you better get used to saying Coach Drinkwitz or you better get used to saying Coach Franklin because that's who's going to be coming here. It's going to be Drinkwitz or Franklin because once Lane Kiffin decides to stay at Ole Miss, okay, the next move to make, the only splash really that you could really make out there that will fit this culture here of University of Florida, the big offense plays that we like to see, there's only one guy left who can make that splash. And that guy is on the West Coast right now.
Yeah.
Okay. His name is Lincoln Riley, but Strickland, you don't got the cojones to make that hire. Just like you didn't have the cojones 4 years ago to hire Kiffin. You didn't have the cojones last year to fire Napier and hire Kiffin. You don't have the cojones to go to the West Coast and bring in here Lincoln Riley, who could also put this program, in my opinion, on track. The West Coast is a different animal. You cannot judge Lincoln Riley by what's taking place at USC. A lot of stuff goes on over there. It's the West Coast. Those people eat a lot of avocado toast, a lot of fruit smoothies. All right. It's not the same. It ain't the Southeastern Conference. Okay. But you don't have to worry about it because I said no cojones in Mr. Strickland's pantalones. Okay. So you're looking at Drinkwitz and you're looking at Franklin. One of those two is going to be the next coach at the University of Florida, Neil.
I love the timing there. I heard your cat meowing and purring. And if that's
that cat away.
if that is not the perfect epitome of Scott Strickland right there.
He's a kitty.
That's the perfect description for him.
Hey, you remember that viral video of the Coastal Carolina coach like 20 years ago when he says, "We got a bunch of cats. We need some dogs.
Yeah.
We got a bunch of cats. Meow, meow. We need some dogs."
Well, we're going to play the Dogs this weekend, so I hope that that's not really a metaphor for any courage or strength. But yeah, I mean, look, it's no secret that, I mean, look at me trying to be the professional one here for a change. But look,
go for it.
There's not a lot of respect to be due to Scott Strickland. So there's no point in saying with all due respect, because there is none. Okay, there's no respect to him. He didn't even hire Todd Golden. That was Billy Donovan, who went into his office and told him, you should probably hire this guy if you want Florida to ever be successful in basketball again. He didn't use those words. I'm paraphrasing, but that was essentially the message. You should probably hire this guy. So there is no respect due to him. He suspended Kevin O'Sullivan for something that could have been handled with just a simple apology. He blew his chance to hire Lane Kiffin the first time. Granted, Billy Napier did have a lot of buzz around him at that time. He was wanted by Auburn and South Carolina, so I will give that bit of credit to Scott Strickland, but he did not go and fire Billy Napier when there was no objective reason to keep him after Texas A&M terminated our souls a year ago in the Swamp for their second straight beatdown loss in the Swamp to an FBS team and our fourth consecutive loss in the Swamp to an FBS team, period, spanning back to the year before that when FSU and Arkansas came into the Swamp and beat us. Then that should have been the point of no return. So I don't want to hear anything about how well the rest of the year played out the way. I just do not care at all. He should not have gotten to that point. It should never have even reached that stage where he got that chance to give us a bit of false hope to lure us back in on him. It never should have even gotten there. So no, there's no respect due to him. But he did say he is going to be using a third-party system here, Turnkey, I believe. Turnkey GNZ, I believe it's called. So there's that. I've also been hearing internally, and I think a lot of other people have, this is not a secret, but the buzz is that the boosters are going to have a say in this. And if Scott Strickland drags his feet too many times on this and the boosters don't ultimately get either Kiffin or someone that they can at least be conceivably happy with, then they're just going to say, we're not giving you any more money, Scott. Like, you're not going to be able to fund all these pretty buildings that you want to play Minecraft on the UF campus with $2 million coming from the university's employment checkbook. Then no, you're not going to get anything from us. So I think Strickland kind of realizes he doesn't have the complete say here. He did go out and say in that press conference, I will be the one to hire the next coach, which I immediately thought, oh no, please be lying. Please be lying. And I think he is. I think that that's just another PR savvy statement from a PR savvy guy who doesn't really understand the pulse of Gator Nation, but just likes to put pretty buildings up. And hey, if Florida wins along the way, then great, but it's not a priority. Let's just build the pretty things in the meantime. But anyway, enough about that. He's enough. He's a completely separate nightmare that we could go down a rabbit hole for hours about. We've got a big game to talk about this weekend. It's Florida, Georgia.
So hold on. So who's your next coach? I gave you mine. Who's yours?
Yeah. Well, I told you who mine. I thought mine would be. I tweeted it.
So
I think it's Drinkwitz.
So you think it's Drinkwitz too?
Which the hilarious thing is, he's a troll too in his own right. You remember the May the 4th be with you thing when he got Dan Mullen fired? doesn't want to win. Yeah. Remember the stand on business stuff against Tennessee a couple years ago? He'll do the same damn stuff. It's just not as publicized as it is with Lane Kiffin. Scott Strickland also has a personal feud with Lane Kiffin, and Scott Strickland is, and he easily meets this threshold. Scott Strickland is comfortably enough of a loser that he will let that personal feud with Lane Kiffin keep him from making that hire.
Well, he could always, yeah. I mean, what we texted about earlier, because we don't really talk much during the week. So we texted about earlier that, you know, Strickland could say to the whatever that he's going after Kiffin, but he could sabotage that through the back rooms. He could sabotage that. Okay. It's very easy to like poison pill that hire. So when it's all said and done, you got to also look at that too, that I really think that he doesn't like Lane Kiffin. You know, he doesn't like him. And yeah, he'll tell the boosters he's going after him, hey man, I'm making an offer. I'm going to make an offer. Here it is. But he could poison pill that. So
and I think he would. The other caveat to that though, for as much as I hate Scott Strickland, and that has been very well documented, there is no such thing as a guarantee in this, because everyone thought that Brian Kelly going to LSU was going to equal national championships because he came so close at Notre Dame, right? At least, you know, for them. They got blasted by Alabama, but for them, they came pretty close. And then he goes to LSU. Well, now he's got nothing holding him back. There's no academic restrictions on me. I can recruit whoever I want. So we're going to win national titles, right? Didn't work out that way. So Lane Kiffin coming to Florida may seem like a slam dunk, but it's theoretically possible that he could bust out at Florida too. We don't know that for certain. And thus, by that same logic, we could hire Alex Golesh from USF, and he could win a national championship for us. The same way that we hired a kid from San Francisco, and he won a basketball natty for us. We just don't ever know that for certain. But what you do know is the likelihood, the objective probability that things are going to work out to a certain degree. And you use the past to predict the future. Eli Drinkwitz has a past of 3 years now of success at Missouri. He also has a past of 3 years before that, before he hired a different offensive coordinator. Those 3 years were pretty miserable. They lost a lot of games in those first 3 years. He had a losing record after 3 years there. Florida certainly is not going to tolerate that again after what it just went through with Billy Napier. So we'll see. But
we'll have more time to talk about this. So don't worry about it.
And that we will have more time to talk about it. But just wanted to put that out there. I know that nothing is guaranteed. So getting Lane Kiffin would be great on paper. I would have a lot higher expectations, but it does not guarantee us anything. The same way that if we wind up falling for another group of five guy, it does not by itself guarantee that we're not going to win anything. Just like when we hired Urban Meyer from Utah, which at the time was in the Mountain West. He was our greatest coach ever. Turned out to be that way. So you just don't know, but you can go with what you know right now. And I don't trust Scott Strickland to do that piece of it at all. So with that said, Florida, Georgia, let's talk about the game itself, the rivalry, the pageantry of it. Adrian, have you ever been to this game?
Oh, man, I've been to not only this game in Jacksonville, I've been to a game in Gainesville, and I've been to a game in Athens. I'm one of those lucky Gators.
And how were those games? How did those games play out for you?
Those are my three favorite Gator games of all time. Let me go through them again real quick. 1993 in Jacksonville. It's my favorite game in Jacksonville.
Timeout game.
The timeout game, and it's also known as the deluge game. I mean, it was raining so much. It was a mud bowl. We were all soaked in the stands. Thank God I was drunk out of my mind. That helped. But it was raining like crazy. And the ending, the timeout game, just like you said, man, we were up 7 points, 12 seconds left. Eric Zayers got the ball at the 12-yard line. He throws a touchdown pass to tie it. Ray Goff would have had the decision to either kick an extra point or go for two to go for the win right there. But Anton Lott, the corner, called timeout right before the snap. You could clearly see it. So he goes from a hero very next play to a zero. He commits a pass interference in the end zone. Okay? So now Georgia has one untimed down at the 2-yard line. Eric Zier drops back to pass, has a wide open guy in the end zone, throws it behind him, misses it, incomplete. Gators win the game. Very next year, 1994 in Gainesville, 52-14. Back then, the student section was right behind the visitors' bench. I was right there yelling at Kirby Smart and Will Muschamp the entire game because Ike Hilliard and Reed Delancey were just cooking both of these dudes, man. And every time they would come back to the bench, I would scream at Kirby and Muschamp that it was a bad nightmare. It's almost over, just a little bit longer. And then, like in the fourth quarter, Muschamp turned towards me and said, "Dude, enough already. I got it." This poor guy, Muschamp. And then the next year, we went to Athens, put a whooping on them dogs, 52-17. The stadium emptied out. Only us Gators were there. Back then, it broke all records for Georgia, the biggest deficit loss in program history, most points scored on them at their home field in Sanford Stadium program history. I don't know if that still stands. It probably still does. I don't know. But that was a beautiful thing. So I have those 3 years, man. I'm a 1992 to 95 Gator. So no matter what Georgia has done to us the last 10, 12, 15 years, I'm inoculated, man. I'm good. I'm good. How about you, Neil?
Yeah, you've lived to see some history. To answer your question, yes, the 52 points Florida scored on Georgia in Athens does still stand today as the most points they've ever given up. Of course, we know the story there, the flea flicker. That was absolutely hilarious. Another reason why we like Lane Kiffin, because he'll do that if you get on his bad side. He will go out of his way to rub salt in the wound and then rub more salt in the wound when you thought, all right, he rubbed salt in the wound, but okay, it's done. The pain is receding. All right, I'll recover. Nope, here's more salt, rubs it right back in the wound. Lane Kiffin will do that. Spurrier does that with a flea flicker that gets them to the shadow of the goal line, and then they throw the touchdown pass play later. And that touchdown pass, I was 1 year old, but I'm the guy that put all these games on YouTube, so I remember cutting this game up. That touchdown pass to make it 51-17, and then the extra point that came after me at 52, that touchdown was thrown maybe a foot away from a defensive back at Georgia named Kirby Smart.
Yeah.
So he had that rubbed right in his face. He was inches, if not at most a couple of feet away from that very unfortunate history for them being made. And I think that's part of why he hates Florida as much as Steve Spurrier hated Georgia.
Yes, sir.
Now, Kirby does have a slightly worse record against Florida than Spurrier had against Georgia. I say slightly because he's lost twice. Spurrier only lost once. But the dominance is pretty similar. I mean, Georgia's been beating Florida in blowouts. They've been beating Florida in heartbreaking fashion. Last year was particularly gut-wrenching. That to see Lagway go down like that after the start of the game he has with the Mizell bomb. Also, 2019 was pretty gut-wrenching, too. Florida was looking pretty good for a CFP spot with only one loss up until that point, and then they go to Jacksonville, and they just can't get the job done. They're down 24-10, and this is one of the few gripes I ever had with Dan Mullen. There was a lot of time bled off the clock. When Florida's down 24-10, I think it's maybe 12 minutes to go, 11 minutes to go. Florida takes 9 minutes off the clock to get one touchdown. And they score to make it 24-17, but now there's 3 minutes to go. And I'm screaming at the TV like, dude, move. You're just bleeding all the clock for them. You're putting all your eggs in the onside kick basket. Oh, it didn't matter. Just oblivious to the time. It was almost very Napier-like, the way that they were completely oblivious to the time in that game. So that really stung. Obviously, you can't talk Florida, Georgia without talking about the Gators stomp, and then what happened the year after, the other timeout game. Yeah. Definitely a special moment for each team in those back-to-back years. 2007, obviously Georgia with the no Sean Marino touchdown. Mark Richt had this celebration plan where they do this whole dunce revolution on the field. All 53 guys just jumping and hollering and getting multiple flags thrown. The thing that people forget about that game is Florida actually came back and took the lead in that game. Then they lost it. It was not a complete and utter beatdown by Georgia. Florida actually made a really competitive game of it. They just could not hang with Matt Stafford and his array of weapons in that game. But, of course, the next year was just the sweetest.
The next year was the timeouts from Urban, but the next year was also the Brandon Spikes hit on No-Shown, right?
No. So 08 was when Brandon Spikes buried No-Shown into the turf.
Okay.
09 was when Brandon Spikes buried his fingers through the face mask of Wayshawn Ely and got him in the eye. And he got suspended for a game for that.
Okay.
So, yeah, Brandon Spikes had he also had a pick six in that game before he served his suspension. He picked off Logan Gray and returned him into the end zone to make that 41-17. Nice. Of course, the overtime game, the only time this game has ever gone to overtime, the year after that in 2010, Florida clearly on the decline. Tebow, Harbin, those guys all gone. But Florida won again. John Brantley got the job done with that quote-unquote three-bow situation with Trey Burton, Jordan Reed. That's probably my favorite Florida victory over Georgia. 2002, 2003, 2005 were great, but there was something about just like knowing that the Florida dynasty was dead, because in 02, 03, 05, those were shock upsets and they were great and I was happy. But 2010, like, you knew that the dynasty was gone, but you still beat Georgia. There was just something about that just felt so indescribably good to me. Like, God, we still have that. And that's awesome. And of course, now knowing what we know, how Georgia's dominated us, that feeling obviously meant something at the time.
For sure. The overtime game, was that the game in which Will Hill almost won it at the end with the interception return?
He stepped out of bounds at the 2-yard line. Yep.
It would have been like almost like a 100-yard interception return to win it as time expired, right?
88 yards.
I always said that would have been our version of Run, Lindsey, Run.
Yeah, it would have.
But at least we still won it.
We still won the game. I honestly, I've had that thought too, and I'm glad that we don't talk about this before we start the show. This makes for good conversation. I've thought about that too. I'm glad he didn't score, because having a punter make the game-winning field goal on Chad Henry, a punter who'd missed field goals that day and before, lost us the game against Mississippi State in the Swamp. A punter who was an All-American punter for Florida, but who had taken a beating from the fan base for not doing well at a job that he was never really supposed to do here, and then come into the game finishing as a hero. And then he goes up to my boy Todd Grantham and he gator chomps in his face. God, and especially knowing what I know now about Grantham after the way he screwed over my boy James Houston, especially knowing that, and then the scene
Grantham gave the toe.
Yeah. So then Henry going right up to him. He points at him. He points at him right in his face. He points at him, and then he chomps right in his face. That was just splendid. That was an unforgettable memory.
Florida, Georgia.
Unforgettable memory. And that's the thing about this game too. The weird stuff that you don't expect does happen. It does. Nobody expected Florida to beat Georgia in 2002, 2003, 2005, and probably 2010, because Florida had lost 3 games in a row at that point, and Georgia had started terribly that year, but they'd also won 3 or 4 in a row, or 3 out of 4 heading into that game. So they were rising up, and Florida was declining. So you thought momentum-wise, Georgia's probably going to win that game. No, it didn't happen. 2014, Florida wins that game. That meant nothing to save Will Muschamp's job. It was absolutely hilarious for Gator fans. So the weird stuff can happen. It hasn't happened much under Kirby Smart, but those who fail to remember history are doomed to repeat it. And as we've talked about, Georgia is vulnerable this year. They're still very good. They're still the favorite in this game for a very good reason. They have out-recruited Florida for the better part of the last decade. They should win this game. They should win this game comfortably. What should happen is not always what happens, Adrian. So let's talk a little X's and O's. Georgia has 1 loss on the year. It is a close loss to Alabama. They are clearly in CFP contention. I don't even think a loss in this game takes them out of it, but they still need to win this game to make themselves feel much safer about their CFP chances. So with that said, what do you, objectively speaking, like about Georgia? What do you think they're weak in And where do you think the Gators can possibly get some, let's say, matchup on matchup advantages over them?
Well, the Gator defense, the Georgia defense, especially a Kirby Smart defense, is probably the weakest that they've been in much of Kirby Smart's tenure, I would say. Probably others than maybe his first year or so. But this defense that Georgia has, man, the one thing that they've always been known for during Kirby's tenure there is to get after the quarterback. They would normally have a couple of dudes, if not 3 or 4 of them, that they just rotated. You remember all those stud defensive ends that Georgia's had the last 10 years or so?
Put them in the NFL draft like it's nothing, like it's no big deal.
I mean, you can name them, man. Just keep coming in waves because they've recruited nothing but 5 stars along the defensive line for the last 10 years. Well, that's not the case. That's not the case this year. They rank 130th in the nation, Neil, in sacks. 130. A Georgia defense under Kirby Smart. Okay? No dominant pass rusher. Their entire 2 deep on defense has an average of 1 year of experience. The entire 2 deep on defense. So that's where they're somewhat vulnerable. They like to play a lot of man. That's been their best defense, is man coverage. And we all know what's the only defense that DJ had success against Texas A&M? Man coverage, right? Now, there's a caveat to all this, which we'll talk about later in the keys to the game, okay? That might just offset all of this that we're talking about. But until we get to then, we have that to think about, okay? So the Georgia defense is what it's been the most weakest. Their biggest advantage, in my opinion, still obviously right now, is going to be Georgia's entire coaching staff against what Florida has, all right? Florida, even though Billy's gone, he still was your head coach. Your head coach was the leader of your team, was the guy who you planted your flag with. Now, obviously, we had to get rid of him for all the reasons we've gone through. But that leaves now a lot of inexperienced people in charge of the Florida program, calling plays, designing offenses, organizing all this. And Billy G, he's never been an interim coach before. He's always, coached as an assistant. He's never been a coach like in a small Division II school or nothing like that. Okay, so the coaching advantage on this is huge. Georgia has a massive coaching advantage. Okay, and you cannot do nothing to offset that. So that is how I see just a real quick snapshot of this game, man.
Yeah, I mean, you talked about the Georgia lack of a pass rush, and I, doing my research, prepping for this pod, watching some tape, I was shocked by they don't even get pressure. Like they're not even close to getting sacks. And the numbers are even worse than 130th in the FBS. They have 8 sacks in 7 games. Like I had to triple check that. I looked on ESPN. I'm like, no, there's no way that's right. Let's check on NCAA.com. Let's check. Yeah, they only have 8 in 7 games. So let's go to Fox Sports, maybe see. Wow, they really only have 8 sacks in 7 games. And those 7 games come against Marshall, Austin Peay, Kentucky, and a bad Auburn team. Now, there's also Tennessee and Alabama and Ole Miss in there, granted. But you got Marshall and Austin Peay and Kentucky in there. Those are not exactly juggernauts, and they're not juggernaut offensive lines on those teams. So that really blew me away. Now, the other side of that, of course, is the last time that we saw Florida's offensive line, particularly its left tackle, against a real opponent, it didn't go well. Now, obviously, Georgia is not of the caliber of Texas A&M is, at least not this year, but the talent that they have is probably more comparable to what A&M has than what Mississippi State has. I mean, let's just face it. Mississippi State does not have the athletes that Georgia does. They just don't. It's not even close. So right. I wonder what kind of bounce back game we see from this offensive line, particularly Austin Barber, because he took a beating from this fan base, including us. We kept it respectful. There's nothing personal towards him. He's a great kid. I've met him multiple times. Good human being, great human being. Didn't get the job done. We wondered, what are we going to see from him the rest of the season? Because Cassius Howell from A&M is a very likely All-American selection. At the very least, he's going to get some honorable mention.
Looking like a top 2 round pick to me too, man.
Yeah. Cassius Howell is an elite pass rusher. So fine. Was that an anomaly bad game for Austin Barber, or is that going to get in his head a little bit? I tend to think that because he's a fifth-year senior, he's going to bounce back positively. I do tend to think we will see good things from him, but you wonder. We don't know that. So let's see, especially now that, again, he is going up against elite athletes. So we'll have to see. And that's where we talk about the offensive game plan from Billy Gonzalez, because we have beaten the horse more than to death. It is just, we've beaten it to death, and then we beat the bones to dust. Like, Billy Napier is a horrendous X's and O's coach. He's not here anymore. So Billy Gonzalez, Ryan O'Hara, and Russ Callaway are going to be the brains behind this offensive game plan, whatever form it may take. What form is it going to take? Are they going to trust the offensive line to hold up in pass pro and just start launching darts all over the field? Or are they going to stick with what they've been doing all year long, because that's what they installed back in the spring and then in the summer? Or are they going to have used this bye week to come up with something that we haven't seen yet, that Georgia has not seen yet on tape? What do you think, Adrian?
Man, it's funny because you've been listening to Billy G's press conferences, right? He's had 2 already, right? Yeah. He's had a couple of the midweek also teleconferences, right? But he had the one in which Strickland, announced him as the intern coach, and then he had the one this week. And every little one of them, every now and then, he'll release little nuggets that you gotta decipher, right? But there's little nuggets and stuff that he says, man. So let's talk about that a little bit. Billy Napier was the one who had the ear of DJ Lagway. Okay, he had the quote unquote green dot mic. So Billy Napier from the sideline was communicating with DJ Lagway. From the sideline of now you start knowing why maybe our road records suck so much, Neil. Okay? You think that's
why?
Crowd is one of them. You think one of the reasons of many, but you think that it's hard to hear Billy in your ear from the sideline in a road environment? That's probably a pretty loud crowd, man. Okay, so now you have that going. Throughout the week, right, Billy was doing, head coaching stuff. He was responsible for a lot of things of a head coach, okay, which is what we've always been talking about. And the offensive coordinator, Callaway, and then O'Hara were the ones working with DJ during the week, during practice, while Billy's doing his big picture head coaching stuff. And now game day comes along, and here comes Billy now. Give me the spreadsheet. Give me the mic. I'm now in charge of the offense. It's almost as if, Billy decided on Saturdays that he was going to, that's when he sat down to play Madden. Okay? After having a full-time job Monday through Friday, on Saturday was when he was going to have fun and play Madden, basically, at the behest of Gator Nation and at the behest of our offense and the quarterback's play call in there. That just doesn't fly, man. That doesn't sound like it was the most optimal way to get the best out of this team, get the best out of DJ Lagway, get the best out of this offense. So it looks like Billy G now has streamlined that with O'Hara. The guy who I guess works with DJ the most, probably DJ has the most confidence in, because he works with him the most Monday through Friday, basically. Probably watches a lot of film with him and stuff like that too. So now he's going to be on the green dot mic, communicating with DJ Lagway, calling plays, going over what he sees. And Neil, he's going to be doing it from the press box. A nice, quiet environment, where DJ will be able to hear exactly what his coach is telling him and there's not going to be no miscommunication, no running the play clock down because the play, you can't hear it, and there's 1 second left, and DJ's hiking the ball, not being able to read the defense, maybe getting a delay of game, maybe a false start. So I expect the offense, Neil, even though it's only going to be the very first game, I expect it to run a lot smoother. I expect plays to come in smoother, quicker. I expect DJ to be able to get to the line, probably have more than 1 second to read the defense, and maybe even, oh my God, do a pre-snap read, maybe even change a play, change a protection. Who knows, man? Some crazy stuff like that. But also, one more thing. Remember, Billy wasn't retained by Billy. Okay, Billy G wasn't retained by Napier. Okay, Billy brings back Billy Gonzalez after, what was his name, Neil? The first wide receiver coach?
Oh, Kerry Colbert. Kerry Colbert. Yeah.
Kerry Colbert takes off after 1 year with Napier. So Billy G is more of the Urban Meyer, Dan Mullen ilk. Okay, he worked under both of those coaches. He came in under Urban Meyer. We know he's already been in communication with Urban Meyer, okay, about this gig, this opportunity he has right now. So I think Billy G's going to open it up. I think his instructions to Callaway and O'Hara when they get together to do the game plan for this Georgia week, and when his instructions to O'Hara are going to be, let's open this bad boy up. Let's go 11 personnel, maybe even 10 personnel. That's 3 real wide receivers. And heavens forbid, that's actually 4 real wide receivers. Because Hayden Hansen, God bless that kid, man. He's a great guy, just like Billy, right? Billy Napier, great guy, okay? But Hayden Hansen will never be mistaken for a Brock Bowers, a Kyle Pitts, that type of athletic tight end. It just ain't gonna happen, man.
And he's a good player. He's just not an explosive pass catcher.
He should not be the focus of your offense.
Right. That's the thing. You can say he's good at what he does without saying he's an explosive receiver.
So let's make these wide receivers the focus of the offense and mix in some Jaden Bogg running in there with a little bit more room than just a phone booth. And let's see what happens, man. So I think that's what's going to happen. So I expect plays to come in a lot quicker, and I expect it to be opened up a little bit more, using your playmakers in space, getting the balls to them, and rocking and rolling, man. That's what I'm hoping for.
You know, there are people out there who watch our show and consume my content, specifically on Twitter and on social media, and accuse me of being too negative. So for those of you who have made it this far into the show, I'll give you something here. I'll give you a positive. God bless Jaden Baugh. It would have been so easy for that kid to just mail it in and say, screw it, I'm just going to not get hurt, pick up yards where I can, and just, save myself the NFL. Because the shelf life of a running back in the NFL is very, very short. Not to mention the fact that if you take a hit in college that takes a tenth of a second off your 40 time, you're done. Or as a wide receiver, like your draft stock takes a massive hit. Or if you can't work out because let's say you get tackled wrong, you land on your arm and you break your arm. Well, now you can't lift weights for 6 months or whatever it winds up being. So now you've lost that ability to impress the scouts with your bench press ability. So it's any little tiny thing that comes in your way to stop your, shall we say, statistics at the combine or your pro day from being the absolute best they can possibly be can cost you millions of dollars. So Jaden Baugh clearly doesn't care about any of that. He's a Gator, and that has earned him the respect of both Adrian and myself, because this is one of the few things we have talked about off air before. So we love Jaden Baugh. We are big Jaden Baugh fans here. We respect him immensely. Florida would not be 3-4 without him. And some of the losses that they've had would have been even worse if not for him. So God bless that kid, and we are so thankful that he has done what he's done to make Billy Napier look slightly less stupid than he actually is to this point, And now, hopefully in a more positive sense, he can make Billy Gonzalez look even smarter than he is. So what does that mean? Well, we talked about the potential for the deep passing game for Florida. This is one of my gripes with Napier too, not to keep going back to that, but you recruited all these elite athletes in a Dallas Wilson and a Vernell Brown just to not use them because you love the 12 personnel and the flood concepts 10 to 20 yards down the field so much. Well, goodbye, Billy Napier. Hello, Billy Gonzalez, the guy that might be able to more adequately call an offense that reflects the talent that you recruited. So let's see it in action. Even if it's just for 5 games, let's get a sense for what could have been, even if the guys wind up transferring, which the new coach who comes in will make a priority to not let that happen. But absolute worst case scenario, let's just have fun for 5 games. Let's just see what happens. We know Lagway throws a nice deep ball. We've seen him make some bad decisions this year, but as we've also talked about, this Georgia defense isn't going to be the one that makes his life a living hell. So he should have some time in the pocket. Yeah. Let's see him do it. Let's see that 5-game tease of what we could have gotten had Billy Napier not possessed the brains of a rock and gotten out of the way of his own stupidity and let someone else call the plays. Let's just see that. That's all I want to see. So with that said, we are at the point in the show where we make some predictions and we talk about what we think are going to happen. Adrian, we talked about this before we really got into the crux of our episode, but before we get to the verdict, just real quick, because I've gotten this sense, and I know Georgia fans are going to watch this and they're going to troll the comments, but they're not the machine they once were. I mean, that's very obvious. How much do they have left in the tank as a program that's led by Kirby Smart? I shouldn't say as a program, because some new coach could always come in and replace him and win titles. But how much left in the tank does the Kirby Smart-led Georgia Bulldog program have?
I mean, look, Kirby himself has said that what they're lacking is depth, right? And that's just because of the way that college football is nowadays with the whole, the transfer portal and NIL, and, they probably cannot stack 5 stars on top of 5 stars, which is a compliment to what, Kirby has done for the last 10 years there. Okay. Number 1. Okay. Number 2, can Kirby adjust to this new style of college football? Heck yeah. And Georgia's probably going to be just fine. Okay. They're going to be just fine. They're going to be probably winning 9+ ball games just about every year, as long as Kirby Smart is still in Athens. So don't think there's going to be a 6-6 Georgia team here in the next couple of years. That ain't happening. But I think college football in general, Neil, you're just not going to have that 10 to 15-year run of Bama and that last, 8-9 year run of Georgia. You're just not going to see that moving forward, man. You're just not. It's going to be a different version of college football. Neil, Vanderbilt and Indiana are in the top 10, probably almost guaranteed, at least Indiana is, of being in the college football playoffs. And Vandy, 1 or 2 more games, and they're going to be in the college football playoff. Vandy and Indiana, man, okay? So that is what we're talking about. We're not talking about, Kirby Smart, he's missed the beat. The game's passed him by. Ain't nothing past Kirby, okay? It's just that the game has changed for everybody because of NIL and the portal. So, just like you said, if Georgia fans think that is, disparaging Kirby or disparaging their program, it really isn't. I have a lot of respect for what Kirby has done there in Athens, and I'm quite jealous of it, but I'm inoculated by it because I'm a 1992 to 95 Gator. So I will always have that. So you can't hold nothing against over my head.
Yeah, and I'm a kid who grew up with the 49-10 beatdown in the timeout. And then the overtime game 2 years later. And then, of course, before that, my early childhood, my infancy was watching Florida win a national title. There is old VHS tape of me at 2 years and 10 months old in my Gator PJs running around Gator chomping. And then I Florida beat FSU 52-20. So I do count that. I was alive. There's video of me doing it somewhere at my parents' house in New Jersey. So that counts. I grew up watching Florida bludgeon Georgia year in, year out. What I will say to Georgia fans is I detest Kirby with every fiber of my being, but God, do I respect him. He makes this game a priority. He hates our guts. He's professional about it. He's not a complete, jerk like the way I would probably conceive Spurrier was. And I like Spurrier being a jerk. Kirby's not like that, but he makes it known to his players, like, you just don't lose this game. And I wish we had a coach who did that. I wish we had an administration that bought in to our football coach the way that Georgia's bought in to Kirby Smart. Now, to be fair, I do not give our AD credit for much because he does not deserve much credit, but I will give him this. He did get on the NIL bandwagon. He got on it 3 years after everybody else did, but he did get on it. So Florida had the funds to be able to pull off a championship this year. They didn't do it because their coach was a moron, but they had what they needed. Georgia's athletic administration was there from the get-go, and Kirby got there well before NIL. He got there in 2016. That was an ugly year for them. And they lost to Vanderbilt before they were respectable. They lost to a very mediocre Florida team. They lost to Georgia Tech that year before. And that's another team, by the way, this year, Georgia Tech, that's probably going to the CFP unless they really stumbled in the last couple of weeks. Georgia Tech was nothing special that year, and they beat Georgia in Athens. That was an ugly year. And then what must have happened, because we see the recruiting rankings, was Georgia got serious about recruiting. They gave Kirby a big budget to go travel and land the top prospects, and he went out and did it. And he had his staff to do it with him. And then he let his staff do what they were supposed to do. Where Billy Napier failed was he did not do what he was supposed to do. Kirby knew what he was not good at, knew what he was good at, did not try to overstep his assistants in the areas that he was good at. He just lent a helping hand where needed, like he worked with the defensive backs, but he let them do their jobs, and they almost won a national title in year 2. And since then, they had a little drop off 18, 19, 20, but they were still in New Year's Six bowls. Then they won 2 national titles.
Let me ask you something.
Yeah.
Has Kirby always had a defensive coordinator since they won there?
If it wasn't Glenn Shulman, he had Will Muschamp for a couple of years.
Dan Lanning.
Yeah,
so Dan he's Lanning. Always had a DC. So, hey, man, that just goes to show you he's a good head coach. He's a good head coach, man.
And he will work with his defense. Like there are players who've come out of there and said, yeah, like Kirby is hands-on, but he also lets his guys do what they're supposed to do. So like Kirby doesn't really I mean, he's not obviously the invincible head coach. I guess his weakness, his kryptonite would be the wheel route that Dan Mullen exploited that one day in Jacksonville, but he doesn't really have an area that we can say, yeah, he's really bad at that. I mean, early in his career, there was the question of he's not making good personnel decisions. He had, I think, Jake Fromm playing over Jacob Eason after Eason got hurt early in the year and then could have come back before he did. But then they just let Fromm keep playing because they were winning. There were some Georgia fans griping about that Eason was healthy again and he could have played and he could have won the national title in 2017. We'll never know that. Then there was the Justin Fields thing. Should have let him play. But the last 5 years has not been what's been killing them. I mean, the Mike Bobo offense, I don't think is particularly brilliant, but it also works because they have the talent to do it. So I don't even want to say that that's an issue. Because he's not an offensive coach and he doesn't try to muddy up the offense, especially when the Georgia Bulldogs are winning games, which they did a lot of from 21, 22, and 23, coming not one game short, but they lost one game that cost them the chance for a three-peat in 23. Lost the SEC championship game in Nick Saban's final year there. Before 24, they kind of took a step back and lost to Notre Dame. Even before the playoff, though, clearly they were not what they were before. So that's the lowdown on Georgia as a program. There's a lot of respect for them. There's hatred for them. I really don't care for their fans barking like feral animals, but you know what? They win games. They've suffered through a lot. Like we talked about, the 90s were brutal for them. The 2000s were brutal for them. The mid-2010s were brutal for them, where they lost 3 games in a row by 2+ touchdowns, including 2 to Jim McElwain. So that sucked. And then 1 to a totally cooked Will Muschamp. So that sucked for them. So it's their turn now. They get to have that. And this rivalry, if you go back and look at the records, there seems to be this unusual sense of pleasure that the teams get in just exchanging beatings against each other for 20 years at a time. Like it is uncanny. From 1990 to 2010, it was 18-3 for Florida. But go look at the 20 years before that. It was almost all Georgia. Then the 20 years before that, it was almost all Florida, and so on. So this is Georgia's turn. That's what history says. History also says that the team that's on top does not run the table in these years, and there are some stray upsets in them. We had 3 of them, 14 and 15, and also in 20, that was an upset. Do the Florida Gators pull another one here? Time to make some predictions. The verdict. Let's do it. What are your keys? Let's start with those.
Let's go. Keys to the game. All right, number 1. You want to go 3-3, or you want to go 1-1, 1-1, 1-1?
No, we'll go 3-3. We'll go 3-3 with
okay.
keys.
3rd down conversion. Okay, that's number 1. Who wins that one? When we have the ball and when Georgia's on defense. When Florida has the ball, we are ranked number 127 in the country in converting 3rd downs. Conversely, Georgia's defense, remember we talked about that earlier, they're ranked 93rd in the nation in preventing 3rd down conversions. So something's got to give. Whoever could buck the trends of how bad they are in that category might be the key to who wins this ball game. That's key number 1. Key number 2, get ahead early and then stay ahead late, obviously, to win the game. Georgia has trailed, Neil, in 4 of their 5 SEC games. They have trailed at halftime. But they come back in the second half like madmen, dude. They are a second half ball club. So Florida needs to jump ahead early, get ahead by enough points early by halftime so you could hold on in the second half. So that's key number 2. Get ahead early. And then the last thing, Neil, that could override everything we've talked about. Nothing's going to matter if this 3rd key doesn't come through for Florida. Injuries. How healthy are you? Okay? Because if Florida has to put out a secondary full of freshmen against Georgia, nothing else is going to matter. If VB3 and Aiden Mizell are not in this ball game, remember that 10 personnel, that 11 personnel that Adrian was so excited about seeing? Yeah, we could probably still see it, but will it be as explosive as if VB3 and Aiden Mizell are in there? Probably not. Okay? Defensive line, the interior of that line, you know, we've been running on fumes there all year, man, with 3rd, 4th, 5th stringers. You know, is the interior of that defensive line going to hold against Georgia's power run? Okay? We'll see. So injuries, how healthy we are. When that injury report comes out, Neil, on Wednesday, it's going to come out tomorrow. It comes out late too, man. I mean, 8 o'clock at night, 8:30,
yeah,
something like that. Jeez, come on, dude. Can't be like noon or something. When that comes out tomorrow, go like this, Gator fans. All right, do a little peek, see how bad it is, okay? Because that just might tell us if it's even gonna be a game or not, man. I'm just being honest, Neil. So those are my 3 keys, brother. What you got?
Yeah, I mean, The first one is going to be something that's, I think, triggered by Texas A&M PTSD, but you've got to block. Like, the offensive line's got to do its job. And Georgia's defense, we've talked about, does not generate a lot of pressure on the quarterbacks. You've got to keep it that way. You absolutely cannot let this be the game where Georgia's defensive line just suddenly finds itself. That can't happen. Or the entire offensive game plan it goes kaput. So that's number one. Number two is ball security. I know that's kind of a cop-out because that's just the way that any college football game goes. You can change any of them with turnovers. But, I mean, DJ Lagway, we've seen – even if you throw out the low-hanging fruit of the 5 picks against LSU, he's made some bad decisions at times this year. He's made some really bad decisions this year. He's made some good ones, but he's made some bad ones. And the bad ones have come against defenses with talent that have very good coaching staffs that, like you talked about, that can disguise their looks. You think you got man, it's a zone, and now the ball is already out of his hand, and there's 3 Georgia guys there. That's not good. That's got to not happen. So if it's going to be VB3 making a Superman type of play where he just goes up and plays defense and swats it away, or if it's Jaden Ball just protecting the rock and making sure, you know what, maybe let's not get those 3 yards. Let's just go down and not fumble and ruin this drive. You cannot turn this ball over. And Florida's defense, aside from the Texas game, which they did very well at this, but Florida's defense hasn't really gotten a ton of pressure on the quarterback either. And this would be a great game for them to really do that because, again, I don't think their offense is superhuman. It's probably better than their defense, but it's not fantastic. They just find ways to win games. The statistics for them aren't superb. They just find ways to win games. They found a way to win at Auburn with a lot of weirdness in that game. Right? The offense came alive for them against Ole Miss when it had to, but there were some shaky periods of that game too. And Ole Miss's defense is good, but it shouldn't be causing you problems for a quarter or 2 at a time. So
overtime, Tennessee.
Yeah, I was gonna say you go to Rocky Top and win that. That's impressive, sure. But then you get but like the Austin P game, you only get 28 in that game. And I know it's Austin P and you can kind of sleepwalk through that game. I get that, but there are just periods of time where the Georgia offense just doesn't look great. It almost takes a quarter or 2 off, and then it'll come alive. If that is going to happen in this game, you've got to not only ensure that they don't score points, you've got to really make them pay with sacks and turnovers that flip the field. So win the turnover battle is key number 2. And then I just kind of teased key number 3, but you've got to win the sack battle too. Sacks in this game, if you get enough of them, they're almost like turnovers because they will flip the field for you. They will give you short fields. They will force you to have to call fewer plays, and thus you have more chances of scoring points because you have less yardage to have to go. So you've got to block for Lagway, and you've got to get after Gunnar Stockton, not let him go through his progressions. All right. So those are the keys. Let's get to the picks, my favorite part of the show. I'm going to talk about the model that Dustin used to nail the Mississippi State score. Now, he had 30-21 in that game. The model had 30-21 in that game. Dustin, so yeah, I talked to him about this. His brain said, yeah, the model says 30-21, but I have a feeling Florida is just going to throw away 7 points at some point. Wound up being exactly what happened. Lagway threw a pick in the end zone. So that was how we came to 23-21 in that game. Let's see what the model says here. Model is pure data, and the model says Georgia by 6. It says Florida has a 36.8% chance to win. Let me write mine down on my iPad really quick here. Get yours out, Adrian. Let's do this really quick. Let's say all right. On the count of 3.
While you're doing that, real quick, Florida just, you said it earlier, Florida just got to let it fly, man. They got nothing to lose. You know what? Throw a couple trick plays in there. Hopefully, Callaway or O'Hara had some trick plays they knew from when, O'Hara was back at Alabama A&M or wherever the heck he was at. bring up a couple trick plays. Maybe Billy G could remember one of Urban Meyer's favorite trick plays back from the early 2000s or something. Get some trick plays, go for it on 4th down, maybe go on a fake punt or something. You got nothing to lose, man. Nothing.
Yeah, I got my score ready whenever you are.
You ready? 1,
right, let's do
2, 3.
3, let's go. All right. Close game. Oh, wow. Your percent chance for Florida is very low.
25%. I got 75-25, yeah.
I think it's this game is almost a coin flip to me.
Coin flip? No way. Wow.
55%. Florida's going to fight in this game. I think that they're going to show up, and I think that they're really going to take Georgia's.
Did you see my score?
26-19. Oh, yeah. If you're listening on audio, Adrian says 26-19, 75% chance for Georgia. I say 28-24 Georgia, with Georgia having a 55% chance. This is one of those games, though, I would not be shocked if Florida pulls it off. Like, I would not. I'll put it back up again for the memes. You guys can meme this, and I know our friends over at the other podcast that loves to troll us is going to make a meme out of this. Not so real. You got
Georgia by 4. I got Georgia by a touchdown. The spread is 7.5, right?
Yeah, spread is 7.5. Dustin's model says 6. That's about right. I mean, that sounds right.
So we both have it under the spread.
We do.
And if that's the case, it could be a fluke play here, a fluke play there, a tip ball here, tip ball there. But I'm telling you, if the injuries are bad, Georgia wins by double digits, so.
And they could anyway, because they do have a talent advantage over Florida regardless. Definitely. So it wouldn't like the way that LSU won by double digits, the way that Miami won by double digits. Those were close games in the second half, but they won by double digits. So this and the way that Georgia won last year by double digits. Georgia fans, I was sitting in the Georgia section by some act by the devil himself, but I was in the Georgia section. They were terrified last year at 20-20. Like, after Lagway goes down and we have Aiden Warner in the game and we score the touchdown to tie it, they are freaked out of their minds at that point. They won the game by 14 points, but don't let anyone tell you different. They were absolutely mortified that the game was even that close. So, and even like leaving the stadium, and, there were, I will say the barking was subdued. Like, there was some of it, but they were more like, yeah, we got to clean stuff up. That's really not good. Like, they're very unhappy with their performance. So, and they're worse this year. I don't think Florida is a whole lot better than they were last year because, Billy Napier is going to Billy Napier all over this program, and his stench is still attached to it. But with the Gators, as we said, being freed of his shackles, I would not be shocked if Florida rolls out something we haven't seen before because Billy Napier is no longer there to prevent it from happening, and Florida pulling off a surprise here. It would not shock me if Florida wins this game. It wouldn't.
I think they got a shot, obviously. They definitely have a shot. I'll feel a lot better about it if I knew guys were healthy and stuff. I keep coming down to that. One more matchup advantage, which, might help us because we've been bad in. Georgia does not have an explosive offense either, Neil. They're just a very grinded out type of offense. They're very good on standard downs. Basically, they always stay ahead of the chains, okay? They're never falling behind. They get their, 4 yards on first down, make it a second and manageable, third and short. So they're always staying in that type of offense. They're not, hitting big plays on you, which is good for us because our safeties have had trouble with that, like we've seen, and our secondary could be sporting a whole bunch of young people. So we need Devin Moore back. If we can even get Cormani back, that'll be a big plus. Devin Moore would be huge. If 28 could play in this ball game, that would be huge. I think Cormani's going to play. If he was a game-time decision against Mississippi State, he's had 2 weeks, unless he had a setback during practice. Cormani, I expect to play. It's 28. If we could get 28 in that ball game, That'll be huge for Florida, Neil. Look for that. That's key number 4. If 28 is in the ball game.
Key number 4. Okay, I'll add another key too. Because you added a 4th one, I'll add a 4th one too. Ready?
Go for it.
Special teams, you're game changers.
Game changers, baby.
Remember against Texas, Florida blocks a punt. It counts for 2 points. All right. What do you think happens if Texas's offense makes one more play in that game and they score a touchdown? Florida loses the game. Those 2 points make all the difference if Texas's offense avoids one more sack and Arch Manning makes one more deep throw. It was not that far off from that block punt for a safety being the play. And it doesn't have to take that form. It could be smack hitting a long field goal. Remember a year ago, Rocco Underwood with the terrible snap, right? That cost Florida 3 points in that game. So, and the year before that in 23, Jonell Aguero blocks a punt out of the end zone for a safety for Georgia. So special teams has had a role in this game before. Let's see if it can have a role in this game in a positive way for Florida. We do have a good punt returner. We do have a good field goal kicker. I still think we have not seen the best from Tommy Doman, the punter, yet. So let's see what we get out of him. But with that said, y'all definitely be sure to check out Dustin's model, CFB Forecaster, patreon.com/CFB Forecaster. It's how he nailed the Mississippi State score. He took what the model gave him and just used a little bit of human element on top of it. That's how he nailed that. If you want to make money betting on college football spreads, you can steal from Vegas yourself by just getting access to our Patreon. Again, that's patreon.com/CFB Forecaster. All right, Adrian, I will be there. I will be in the Florida section this time, so I will not have to deal with at least as much of the Georgia barking. So that'll be nice. But I hope to finally bring home a win. I am 0-4 seeing this game in person. I've been all 4 times since the pandemic. 21, 22, 23, and 24. Those are the 4 games I've been to. Florida's lost them all. 3 of them have not been close. So hopefully this is the time I get a win. But you know what? It's great to be a Florida Gator, and it is so great to not have Billy Napier as our head coach anymore. I just cannot believe how long we let that go on, but it is over and there is hope now, and that feels so good. There is hope for a new coach. That feels even better. But for now, Neil Shulman from In All Kinds of Weather signing off. Adrian Perez, be sure to go follow him, by the way, at Gator Diamond Pod for more off-season news from the Stickball folks. So at Gator Diamond Pod, also follow him personally at ADNDEL. Until next time, y'all. Go Gators. Let's beat the Bulldogs for once, and let's get something good to feel good about before we get that next new coach. Go Gators.